Good morning. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to the State of Early Learning, a Childcare Crisis, Data Dashboard, and Community Conversation. I'm Andrea Doggett, Senior Director of Education at United Way Suncoast, where early learning represents one of our three pillars of focus. Through our United We Learn initiative, we invest in and implement programming designed to elevate literacy and learning within selected attendance zones of Title I elementary schools. These zones include many of our ALICE families, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Over the last couple of years, United Way Suncoast has grown its internal data and investment team to be able to put information to work. Data is only as useful as it is actionable. We can now more easily and more accurately compare impact across initiatives and contextualize information in changing community conditions. The COVID-19 pandemic had severe long-term impacts on the childcare industry. The effects continue and have implications on our broader workforce and learning loss during the most pivotal phase of early childhood development. This led us to create an awareness-raising and educational resource for nonprofits, businesses, and community members to strengthen advocacy and fundraising efforts and inspire us to take collective action. It covers the importance of early learning, the state of voluntary pre-kindergarten and kindergarten readiness rates, the cost burden for families, and so much more. You can view it on our website at unitedwaysuncoast.org/early learning dashboard. Now let's take a sneak peek. As you'll see on the screen, this is a summary of one of the many sections on this dashboard. We've made a point to highlight very key data points, both in bold and in the Did You Know section. This dashboard is interactive. So in addition to the information that you can read through, you can also click on the buttons below for more information and to visualize. This is going to show the average pre-K teacher salary versus the living wage based off of MIT's living wage calculator. You'll be able to see that we've also intentionally broken down the data in such a way that we can see how it's reflective in each of our communities or each of our cities. If you click back, you'll also be able to visualize the number of childcare employees. And as we mentioned, COVID, at the onset of the pandemic, we had a severe drop in April of 2020. So as you scroll over, you can compare how many employees we had and what time of the year that was. The data starts back in 1985. And ultimately, the pandemic set us back about 20 years in terms of number of employees in the workforce. And we've only since, although we have recovered and you do see that upward trend, we are still well below where we were and need a lot of support from the community to get back up there. And some of our panelists today will talk to those points. If you go back, Erin. If you also scroll down, you'll see that we have different quotes from community leaders as well as resources for parents, caregivers, and employees. We have, if you can click on the kindergarten readiness, you can see different checklists that can help our families know whether or not their kindergartner is entering kindergarten ready and what steps they can take 6 months leading into entering kindergarten to be successful as a family and as a student. We've also had some really big legislative wins in early learning over the course of the last few years. We've made a point to summarize those into some digestible bullet points, as well as share different budgetary implications and opportunities for us to advocate as a community moving forward. And the very last section is what we can do as any community member. We all have a role and a responsibility for the success of our children and our families to be a thriving community. And that means taking action every day in every possible way. And again, our panelists will be able to share really great information with us today about what actions we can take collectively. I want to thank United Way Suncoast Education, Data, and Marcom teams for making this dashboard a reality, with a special recognition for Julia Goldman and Jody Salas. Our upcoming discussion with panelists will bring this data to life and illuminate some of the most pressing issues in what is truly a crisis for our community. Now let's get started by bringing our MC for today's event. She was born and raised in Tallahassee and is a proud University of South Florida graduate where she competed in track and field. She's now in her third year at News Channel 8 as a reporter and anchor during the morning newscast, and she's developed a strong following with her For the Culture series. Please welcome Deanne King.
Well, thank you so much for that great introduction. Also, thank everyone with United Way Suncoast for even offering and extending the invitation to host this panel. I do believe this is something that we all need to be discussing and more frequently. Quite honestly, I come from a background. My mother came from education as well as my sister. My sister's a school social worker within the Hillsborough County School District. So this is very, very important, and I am so honored to be a part of it. So let's get to it. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna have some great discussions. There are some great questions that we're gonna be talking about and answering today. I also want to start off by talking about what deems this as a crisis right now. So as many of you know, in our region, the average annual cost of childcare for a toddler, it's greater than the annual tuition at the University of South Florida. As a USF grad, I think that it's quite frankly ridiculous. It's something that needs to change, not to mention only 50% of students in our 5-county footprint enter kindergarten ready to learn. And on average, early learning educators earn $5,000 below the living wage for our area. And we even saw that right now on that dashboard. Now, these are just some of the things that when we're talking about that we are currently in a childcare crisis and what United Way Suncoast is talking about in our community and nationally. These are just some of the reasons. There's a lot more. We're going to discuss all of them this morning. But I also want to introduce our panelists. Phenomenal group here, very esteemed panel of experts. I'm going to first introduce our hands-on nonprofit executive and early educator, known for research-based decisions and efficient operational management. She has nearly 20 years of experience in the early childhood field and holds a bachelor's degree in early childhood education and a master's degree in nonprofit management, both from the University of Central Florida. She's still a great person, even though she went to UCF, excuse me. She currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Early Learning Coalition in Pinellas County, which annually serves more than 15,000 children. So please welcome Lindsay Carson.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to speak to Miss Lindsay a little bit later. Also joining us today is a woman who has worked for Sarasota County Schools for 23 years. She earned a bachelor's degree in early childhood education from the University of Georgia's Mary Frances Early College of Education, a master's in educational evaluation and research from George Mason University, and a leadership certificate in educational administration and management from the University of South Florida. Go Bulls, right? She now serves as the Director of Early Learning and Pre-K for Sarasota County Schools. So please welcome Tracy Cardenas.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be with all of you here today and part of this great childcare crisis community event, an important conversation, and I'm proud to serve as a panelist and with all of you here today.
Thank you, Tracy. We're so happy you're joining us today. And finally, we are thrilled to be joined by a seasoned Tampa Bay business professional who has built an incredible reputation during her 10+ years in the region. After earning a bachelor's degree from Christian Brothers University and an MBA from Wake Forest, she rose through the ranks of Tampa's banking industry, eventually reaching the level of managing partner at Mutual of Omaha. She then shifted to become the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for United Way Suncoast. She now serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Tampa Bay Partnership. That's a coalition of regional business leaders working together to improve the personal and economic well-being of Tampa Bay residents. So please help me welcome Bamitra Simmons.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So glad to be back with my United Way Suncoast family, and excited that you guys are hosting such an important community conversation this morning.
And thank you, Ms. Bamitra, for joining us as well this morning. So this is our amazing panel. They are going to be answering some tough questions, hard-hitting questions, as we say in news, right? But first, I want to let folks know that we do have a chat system. So you'll see it on Zoom. We've been working with Zoom for a couple years now. But in that chat system, you're able to submit questions for our panelists as we move through this discussion this morning. So we encourage you to write your questions. Eventually, toward the end of our session today, we are going to go through some of those questions, address some of those as well. So please be aware of that. Feel free to ask any and everything that you would like. So we're going to get this thing started, all right? So Lindsay, we're going to start with you. As the CEO of the Early Learning Coalition in Pinellas County, why do you think this crisis demands the attention of not only childcare stakeholders, but honestly, our entire community as a whole?
The childcare community is not limited to children and families. The fact is we have a staffing shortage across industries, and many of those employees have children. In order for families to work, someone has to take care of the children. In addition to that, we want to have a prepared workforce, and that begins in those early education years. 90% of brain development happens before age 5. We want to make sure that our children are successful throughout their academic career because our community needs that. Eventually, these young children are going to be taking care of us. So it's critical to our economic recovery and our long-term economic development as it relates to our next workforce.
Very well said. We have to raise up a child, right? They are definitely our future. Very well said, Lindsay. Tracy, looping you in here, what's your perspective and the perspective of the school district on the status of early learning and kindergarten readiness? So how does it impact the public school mission? We just heard Lindsay talk about how 90% of that development is very critical before that child even goes to kindergarten.
Well, and I'm so glad that she brought that up because that's actually one of my bullet talking points. In fact, our district has invested in a strategic plan with a focus on early learning and pre-kindergarten for students and families throughout the community. Because we believe this investment will promote access and opportunity, increase the likelihood that all students will enter kindergarten with similar socio-emotional and academic readiness skills. In order to work towards this goal of increasing positive late life outcomes for all students, Sarasota County School District is proud to have formed really strong partnerships with the Sarasota County Early Learning Coalition, or ELC, our local Head Start programs that are currently run by Children First, as well as a plethora of other community agencies and organizations. We've actually worked together to create a community pre-kindergarten to kindergarten transition action plan with input from a variety of stakeholders, and including things like partnering for professional learning for educators, increasing parent and family engagement, progress monitoring using the Florida Early Learning Developmental Standards, and communicating across agencies with parent-family permission, obviously. Again, these partnerships are critical as there are significant consequences for not being kindergarten ready. One example includes that of the students identified that are not ready for kindergarten, 80% of those students may be more likely to require individualized services and support, which is another cost, obviously, but also can be a detriment to later life outcomes. So in terms of early learning and kindergarten readiness, it's of paramount importance. In fact, so much so we're investing a lot of time and energy in having those community conversations. And I'm proud to have been a part of that, even with many people that are on the panel today. So thanks again for inviting me to be a panelist for this important community conversation.
Thank you, Tracy. And then coming from Sarasota County Schools, just in case anyone missed that, I'm glad to hear that the Sarasota County School District has measures in place to help and make sure that that 0 to 5 age range is getting ready for kindergarten. I'm looping at Bamitra here. Learning is more than an educational issue, right? So why has the business community taken such an interest in early learning in children?
Education is a crucial part of the talent pipeline, and even more so, it's an indicator to a thriving and successful community. Each year, the Tampa Bay Partnership, in collaboration with United Way Suncoast and the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, puts out an annual regional competitiveness report. This report measures our community against 19 peer and aspirational markets. And we take a look at how we're doing over 60 different indicators. 20 of those indicators, a third, are dedicated to education and talent. So that gives you some indication of how important this is for the business community. Better academic performance means greater labor force participation rates, and also a more prosperous region. At a macro level, an educated population is tied to greater economic impact. And so that's why we care about this as business and community leaders.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. I appreciate that response. One of the aspects United Way Suncoast explores in its early learning dashboard that we just saw a few minutes ago, it revolves around staffing, right? So a recent New York Times story noted there are 100,000 fewer childcare workers nationally than there were before the coronavirus pandemic. That's all according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Not to mention, when the dashboard was up a little while ago, I even took a look, and COVID set the number of childcare employees back 20 years. That really stood out to me. That is astounding. Now I'm going to bring back in Vamitra here. What have you heard from business leaders as it relates to the challenges created by a lack of staffing and childcare opportunities? Are we seeing employees struggling with this access to high quality childcare?
Sadly, we are. I mean, this is both a local and a national issue. High demand from parents returning to their jobs and fewer number of childcare facilities and workers in there are exacerbating this problem. The other issue from the business community standpoint is what we pay childcare workers, right? So if you think about the average childcare worker earns about $13 an hour, that's now $5 or $6 less than they can get earning at a fast food restaurant. So this is becoming a greater issue. And then you take in the high cost of childcare. And so what we can do as the business community is foster better working environments for our working parents that need childcare. And so again, you're seeing this, and so that's kind of the take from the business community standpoint.
But Mitra, I want to ask you a quick follow-up question, because when you think about that, right, in the business sector, you have childcare workers, as you said, on average making $13 an hour. Are we seeing that kind of make a trickle-down effect as it relates to people actually working? Because when you think about it, the people making up the business sector are your moms, are your dads, and they have to be able to afford childcare.
Right. So the pandemic obviously exacerbated these staffing shortages. But what we found is it's not that people aren't working, they're just wanting to go back to higher paying jobs. And then they're also wanting to go back to jobs that aren't as taxing on them physically, right? And so that's why we're starting to see, particularly for our early learning staffers, why we're really seeing this become an issue. As a whole, the industry's struggled with the staff turnover, but reports are showing us that workers who left during the pandemic were less likely to return even after all the vaccines and things like that came about.
Thank you for your insight on that. I appreciate it. Tracy, in terms of staffing, are there steps school districts can take to elevate the actual number of high school graduates who would consider early learning as a career?
Yeah, so I really think that's a timely question, as school districts are always exploring creative ways to allow students the opportunity to explore life and career pathways. And this even begins in elementary school. In fact, currently our district strategic plan includes a specific strategy focusing on equipping all students for life readiness through access to accelerated, specialized college and career-focused instructional opportunities. One of the conversations that's happening within our community partnerships is how can we increase that interest, if you will, and opportunity to become an early childhood educator. One of the things that we came up with is partnering with, universities, with local institutions to create pathways for folks to get started. So an example of that might be that recently the Sarasota County partnered with the Sarasota Early Learning Coalition and reinstating the Florida Childcare Professional Credential, or FCCPC, certificate program of study through the Suncoast Technical College that had not been being provided. And we all worked together so that we could help to support our local pre-kindergarten programs throughout our community with folks that had that particular credential. And so really being creative and connecting our community folks with the credentials that they need is a step forward. I think it's a positive step forward. Moreover, I think we all have a responsibility to communicate and continue to do so, like we're doing today, the importance of early childhood, and invest in folks who are interested in becoming an educator for our youngest children in our community. So our district's always open to those conversations. conversations and connecting with folks that can make a difference, just like we did with this FCCPC certificate program.
You brought up some really good points. I know I'm springing this question on you kind of last minute here, Tracy. I do kind of want to ask you because it's a big topic. It's pay. And so
Sure.
what are we seeing with our school districts as it relates to compensating these teachers that will hopefully kind of lure them in a little bit to actually want to teach to where they make a wage, where they feel like their work is valued?
Well, I think the good news is there is an increased amount of attention being paid to early childhood. It's funny because a lot of our early childhood educators will get together and kind of poke each other with the elbow and say, hey, people are finally paying attention to us. It's already been referenced. We'll keep saying it. 90% of brain development occurs before age 5, right? And so if we really want to make an impact and we want to make sure that our students are ready for what comes next, we know that an investment in early childhood can make a difference. And so how do we do that? As a school district, we look at creative ways to fund programs because there are different sources out there for a school district. And I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of all of that, but you often will hear the terms braiding funding sources or finding community partners who are willing to invest. I think that it's going to take more. I think it's going to take a wave of folks, that collective voice, if you will, that says, hey, this really matters. And this will help all of us have a better future, not only our children. And because, the argument could be made, well, I don't have any kids, or, I moved to Florida, say, because this is my retirement spot. Well, it's going to be real difficult to go out to your favorite restaurant if the folks there can't find appropriate childcare for their children. It's going to be really difficult to go and stay in that nice, tidy hotel if there's nobody to receive you at the reception desk or to make your bed at the end of a day because they're at home taking care of their children because they can't afford it. So I think that right now, a lot of folks are really invested in this, and beyond just the, what's in it for me effect, of investing in early childhood. If we really focus on what's in it for them, there's all the research that says for $1 of investment, you get anywhere between a $5 and $14 return based on whatever you're looking at, whether it's health, later health benefits or, incarceration or some of those things. And so, obviously this is my passion, so I'm rambling on a bit. I don't know. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, it definitely answered my question. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask Lindsay, we kind of got that school district perspective, but what about the coalition and other coalitions? How are we helping kind of boost that money and get teachers a little bit more money when it comes to their salary?
Thank you. The money matters. There's no way around it. They love children, but money matters. They, as you mentioned earlier, are living below the ALICE population. And so we have several initiatives in place to help with the recruitment and the retention of new instructors in our early learning workforce. We've partnered with the Department of Education, Division of Early Learning, to offer a variety of things. There are significant bonuses for new folks coming into the field. A new teacher coming in can get right now up to $1,800 just for entering the field, going through some initial training, and joining our industry and workforce. In addition to that, we do want to continue to upskill them. There is a plethora of trainings available with completion bonuses, coaching support to help ensure their success and commitment to the trainings that are offered based upon the evidence-based practices, so that we know the training that's being offered actually impacts child outcomes and really prepares them for their efforts in this industry. We're competing with wages that are obviously quite a bit lower, comparable to Wawa and Aldi. And so in reality, we have to make sure that there's incentives. Another way we do that is through retention bonuses. In Pinellas County, we have an Elevate program that is designed to give wage subsidies to instructors based upon their tenure and their educational attainment. They can get an additional anywhere from $1,500 a year added to their wages to right now up to $9,000 a year on top of their regular wages from the school they work at, or for our family childcare home providers as well. They can get those wage subsidies to help them remain in the field. They only get them while they remain in for at least a year. And so we really want to encourage them to both stay and to grow in the industry. We are really working to create a world-class workforce. It is difficult, and there is certainly a labor of love here, but without additional wages, it's really hard to keep them. The Division of Early Learning and our legislature this year has actually increased the reimbursement rates for the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. So when our VPK providers agree to pay at least $15 per hour to all of their VPK staff, there is a significant subsidy, or not subsidy, but increase to the base student allocation so that they can incentivize that. The challenge we're facing is, how do we sustain those things? In our world, we have effectively market failure. The cost of delivering services, providing care is already more than parents can afford. And we've got to do something about these wages that is sustainable in order for us to continue to deliver services. And some of that will come by increasing tuition, increasing reimbursement rates for public programs, but it is a much bigger issue. Another way we can do that is in partnership with the private sector. Some organizations are now offering childcare subsidies as an employee benefit to create that family-friendly workplace, both because there's a social cause there, but they need staff. And in order for them to have staff, they need support.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to share a quick little story here. And I love hearing this story. If you watch Channel 8, our morning meteorologist, Elise Spann, her mother is a longtime educator in Georgia. And she's told the funny story about how when Lee was younger, her mother had a foreign exchange student. And the foreign exchange student came to Lee's house, and she was like, "This is your house?" Because in her country, teachers were like doctors. They lived in mansions and they had these massive houses. And she was just like, "This is where I'm about to live?" You were a teacher. I thought I was coming to a mansion. And it's just one of those things where, yeah, it makes you chuckle and makes you giggle, but then it honestly makes you think, right? Because these are the people who are putting in charge of our future, right? So very well said. Some great options there for the future of early learning. We're going to move into kindergarten readiness now. And just a reminder that we will allow for a few questions from the audience in our next segment. So that is coming up. So if you have any questions, make sure you submit it in the question and answer portion. Tracy, going back to you, as noted on the early learning dashboard, the kindergarten readiness rate for the 5-county area right now is 50%, but Sarasota County Schools is actually leading with nearly 60% right now. The legislature has approved a new assessment system for VPK students. How do you think this will impact the issue of kindergarten readiness?
So one particular aspect that's been very helpful has been working closely with our ELC, Children First, and the other agencies, like I've indicated before, in examining how to continually strengthen pre-kindergarten transition. We do have that action plan and we follow it. The utilization of pre-K or pre-kindergarten to kindergarten transition checklist that's provided by our partners with the ELC, that's huge. And we disseminate that to all of our elementary school sites throughout the district. This checklist is in the process of revision to potentially include the STAR early literacy information results for the third progress monitoring period, or at the end of the year. And the good news is that kindergarten teachers will also be using the STAR for progress monitoring as part of the coordinated screening and progress monitoring program, otherwise known as the Florida's Assessment of Student Thinking, or FAST as it's referred to. That's in alignment with our best standards or benchmarks for excellence in student thinking. And the good news is the Division of Early Learning has taken those Florida Early Learning developmental standards that cover what students should know birth to age 5 and created crosswalks with the benchmarks for excellence in student thinking for kindergarten through 3rd grade. So using those tools, partnering with our ELC as well as others, and having those conversations about, hey, how can we strengthen that pre-K to K transition? Look, our ELC has done a lot of work with their Look for the Stars. And if Janet Kahn, our CEO, were here, she would probably tell you that. So I feel comfortable sharing that as well, because she's really proud of that Look for the Stars that she has going on. So shout out for that. But I think we also do a lot of work together, Children First and ELC and the other agencies. I mean, I could go on and list, and I hate to do that because then you leave so many people out. But we have community foundation partners, and everybody's coming together on these conversations. Andrea has been a part of them, and Bronwyn and Lindsay, I think you've been involved, even, connecting all the way through. Vimitra, I know that you're having those same conversations, and Ernest, I mean, all of us here, like it takes all of us to be on the same page. We cannot work in silos. We can't do it without one another. If you look at where are these students in our community, we own a lot of these students, but some of them, parents keep them at home. And especially as a result of COVID, we're seeing them come in and they haven't been anywhere. So how do we get this message also out into families? Like, what is it that your child needs to know and be ready for when they enter into kindergarten? What can you do as a parent partner at home? So I think that this new assessment program will have a positive impact in that we'll have some continuity in all those conversations and a collective conversation about those tools that are being used and can help to strengthen what we're already doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. Vimitra, now we know childcare directly impacts whether employees actually show up to work. We talked about that just a little while ago, but how does kindergarten readiness concern the business community because of its long-term impacts on high school graduation rates as well as workforce development?
Yeah, so we're obviously kindergartners who are prepared to learn from the moment that they enter the K through 12 system are more likely to have long-term beneficial educational and financial success in life. And I know that for all of us, we live and breathe and talk this stuff every day. So I do want to just, remind for the larger audience that, kindergarten through third grade is when you learn to read. And then fourth grade and beyond is when you read to learn. And so if you don't catch up by fourth grade, it's going to be very difficult for you to catch up, which then affects high school graduation rates and what our skilled labor force looks like. And so this is something that is like all an inescapable network that we're all responsible for. Also, what we found is during this time of post-pandemic, end of pandemic, I don't know what the correct term is, the students who are more affected are our lower income students and our Black and brown students, right? And it's not just about the parental community partners and whatnot, it's also them having access to broadband access and things of that nature. And so the business community is trying to get involved in this because it has a lingering, ongoing effect. And then that affects the type of companies that want to come here based on what our workforce looks like, the companies that want to stay here, the companies that want to expand here, and then what our community members see as reasonable opportunities for themselves. And so that's why we are engaged in this and involved in this and rolling our sleeves up to help improve the numbers.
Very well said. Accessibility is very key. The story that we ran this morning in regards to United Way Suncoast is about their Campbell Park Neighborhood Resource Center. So important, so vital, so many resources that people probably don't even know about that's right there in the middle of their community, including their early learning center, which is helping parents and helping kids through that 0 through 5 range and make sure that they're ready for kindergarten. But again, parents and folks have to have access to that. And so that's very key. Bringing in Lindsay here, we talked about the roles that school districts and the business community can play in promoting kindergarten readiness. What's the role that parents can play as a vital aspect of early learning? I kind of just talked about that. You see how I set you up? I set you
nicely teed up. Parents play a critical role. In fact, parents are a child's first and most important teacher. In reality, all the programs that we have, including ones I'm very passionate about, are there to support parents. Nothing replaces that interaction at home and opportunity for parents to drive their child's learning. It doesn't require them to go through extensive training to be able to do this. In reality, parents can do very simple things to support their child's development. First, be present. Be present. When they're very young, keep in mind that holding a baby, cueing with the baby, having that serve and return of, dialogue that no one can understand is a very important start. And then lots of parents, we know, are stretched very thin right now. So there's always that concern of, timing or expertise. And in reality, for those families, using very, very simple moments can help to support their child's development. Things like the 3 T's by PNC, but the tune in, talk more, and take turns. Those are things you can do while you're driving in the car, while you're doing laundry, while you're making dinner. Just singing with their child. They don't care what your voice sounds like. Having those conversations with kids really develops their vocabulary, communication, and bonding, which creates such a foundation for their future learning, is so important. In addition, our parents make choices for their children. And as it was mentioned earlier, children who participate in VPK are better prepared for kindergarten. Again, our role is to support families in making the best choices for their children, but part of that comes with helping them to understand what resources are available to them and how to access those resources. And we can see after many years that VPK makes a difference. Helping parents access VPK, see what providers are out there. They get to choose who the provider is and what best meets their needs, whether it's public school, faith-based, private preschool. They have the opportunity to do that. But helping them understand the importance of it and how it can truly benefit their child is also really important. So that presence and those choices really set the trajectory for their child's future success.
Thank you, Lindsay. I am going to open the floor up for our question and answer portion. Majority of the questions, I know a lot of folks are wondering if we'd be able to send out a video and a recording of this. All registered participants will receive an actual recording of this panel and of this virtual presentation that we're having this morning. We do have a question that is being asked. Give me just 1 second. Is it possible for our VPK teachers to get the transition checklist as well?
So I'm not sure which VPK teachers, if it's a Sarasota County program, those transition checklists are shared with the different early learning sites. Those teachers fill them out at the end of the year, and then they're collected by the Early Learning Coalition of Sarasota and then given to me, basically, and our team to disseminate to the schools throughout the elementary schools in our community. The school counselor receives them. Obviously, that's done in partnership with the family. So the family is aware that this is filled out. The family also has a copy of it. That would be a question of reaching out to our Sarasota Early Learning Coalition, if that's coming from outside of Sarasota, if the question's coming from outside of Sarasota, to get a copy of what they're using here within Sarasota.
Well, thank you so much. If anyone else has a question, I'm going to ask a question just so you can pop it in very last minute. I want to know, we hear about so many efforts as it relates to, helping our children, helping our teachers, helping the staff within a school district. Is there a way to somehow create something where we can see this across different districts, right? So we see the efforts from Sarasota County School District. We see the efforts from Pinellas County School District. We see the efforts from Hillsborough County School District, but how do we make sure we're all on one accord? If anyone can chime in on that.
I'll start with that. I think for just in terms of us working together as a region, we are doing that. And one of the nice things about having an organization like United Way Suncoast is that they are a multi-county organization. There's also a very collected effort right now to make sure that as a region that we are not necessarily speaking with one voice, but speaking with many voices for one message. And that's something that we've been really diligent and deliberate with as a region, especially as we're trying to advocate for these issues for state and federal dollars so that we have many different voices going to Tallahassee speaking with the same message?
We do have some metrics where we can look across county to see what's working and what's not. There is certainly statewide initiatives, and then there's locally developed initiatives that are intended to meet the unique needs of various communities. However, we do have some standardized measures. Of course, kindergarten readiness is the pinnacle of what we're trying to attain. There is also some quality measures, looking at accreditation, looking at performance metrics with VPK and school readiness, which include class assessments. These are program assessments looking at teacher-child interactions. And those, based on the recent legislation, are things that are done across the state. And one of the benefits of that is we're able to identify which communities are having success, and then among early learning coalitions and districts to be able to partner to say, what exactly are you guys doing that's working so much? And at the same time, that data helps to inform parents on which programs would best meet their child's needs and how to select a high quality program. And so I do think there are some metrics. When we look at teacher qualifications, we have the career pathways in partnership with DCF, so we can begin to look at our workforce and how they're progressing in educational attainment, which we know has a direct impact on program quality. There are some of those overarching measures, and soon we'll also have that progress monitoring metric as well.
Thank you all so much for chiming in on that. We do have another question. And this is a pretty good one. It says it's for Tracy and Lindsay. Do you have experience with sending home specific educational advice, suggestions, resources to parents of early learners? And what strategies of engaging parents have actually worked for you or not?
That's an ongoing effort for anyone invested in education, whether it be early childhood education, birth through age 5, or if we're talking about K through 12 and beyond, keeping that parent and family engagement as the forefront of the mission. I think we were talking about earlier as the parents or families being the child's first teacher and most important one, making sure that they have that information is critical. We have on our Sarasota County website, we have some links and some information about pre-K to K readiness. It's right there and accessible. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the First 1000 Days Suncoast project, which has on their website an enormous amount of information for families. And we've been blessed, I think many of us here, to be included in that first 1000 days from the time of inception, which I believe now is over maybe 6 years ago. And we've added continually to the membership for that organization. And part of that organization is this outreach and education piece, which includes, getting the message out to our families. So, there's a lot of investment from our early learning partners within the community. And there's also a lot of investment from the school district side to get things in the hands of families that will help them. And you think about, other partners, such as our local libraries, our local agencies, food bank, everybody. And like I said, and Andrea's probably going to laugh at me. I see her nodding her head because I don't have the list of everybody in front of me. And I know somebody's going to be on this call saying like, hey, what about me? Why didn't you mention me? So just know that you're out there, and I don't have the list. Otherwise I'd read off your name, because thank you.
We do, through our pre-K to kindergarten transition, have some routine things we send home each month to help as they're on that path toward kindergarten, so that parents have some additional tools to support them. But I will put in a plug for Vroom, which is it's an app that parents can do, and it sends them messages each day of simple things they can do to support their child's development. It's based on brain research, and it's a really effective tool that we help to promote to connect our families with.
Thank you for that. And I know we do have a few more questions. People popped in a bunch of questions the last minute, but just out of respect for everyone's time, I'm going to ask those folks who do not get their questions answered to email your questions to Nicole Brown. It's nbrown@uwsuncoast.org, and we can actually it'll probably be easier, whoever can pop that email and that name into the chat so that everyone can see it, just in case they missed it. So we're going to kind of move into our wrap up portion. I want to ask Bamitra, your closing thoughts as it relates to this panel. What's your call to action to the business community as it relates to continuing to foster these relationships with early learning and creating family-friendly work environments to help address this crisis?
Sure. I think there are a couple things that the business community can do. One is have your voice heard by your elected officials, both at the local and state level. There's nothing more powerful than for us to supplement what they're already hearing from our early learning warriors and experts that are in this field, but to hear from the business community as to why this matters. So using your voice from an advocacy perspective and to help boost their policy efforts is really important. The second thing is creating a culture within your organization that makes these things easier for your parents that work within your companies, right? It's like you are responsible for your culture and making it easier for your parents there. So your own personal culture and then using your voice from a policy and advocacy standpoint.
A great call to action. Thank you, Bamitra. Tracy, given that kindergarten readiness is very integral and linked to the efforts of school districts, what message would you like the audience today to take away about the importance of early learning?
Well, I think I speak for everyone on the panel, which, if you could just repeat this message out to anybody you talk to, 90% of brain development occurs prior to age 5. Anytime I say that, people are like, what? Whoa, early childhood educators know it. Some of your early learning teachers, your primary K through 3, they may know it, but I find that in conversations, a lot of people don't know that. So make sure you share that. 90% of brain development, that's pretty powerful. Research indicates that investing in high quality early childhood education will lead to an increased number of students graduating from high school and has other life benefits as well. Better health benefits, which I think people find surprising, so that as you get older, you benefit by your health, employment, educational attainment. There's, you could go on. So if we're willing to make that investment, we can make a difference. Given all of that information, especially what I shared about brain development, I feel like it's a no-brainer, to invest. Remember, we all have that responsibility to care for the most vulnerable within our community. And in this case, we're talking about our youngest children. I think that what they could do to help is just exactly what many people have been doing, paying attention, investing where they can, partnering with other people, advocating for early childhood throughout the community, helping to support early childhood educators, and making sure that families know who to reach out for information on available early childhood programs in the community.
Thank you, Tracy. And Lindsay, what's your call to action to the audience as it relates to supporting the early learning coalitions and just early learning in general?
Thank you. Now is the time for action. And there are some key things that the community can do overall. One is advocating. As I mentioned earlier, the cost of care is very high. What we're finding now is that income-based subsidy and assistance program, that financial assistance is based upon household income. As families are getting that dollar raise, that little bit of increase, they're no longer qualifying for those services. And certainly that little increase isn't going to replace the cost of care that they're getting through benefit. And so we want to help stabilize families financially. That's a big indicator, a big predictor of kindergarten readiness. And so advocating to your elected officials, chambers, and other business leaders that we really want to push for reform in this to make care more equitable, more accessible, so that those families are not forced to make such a tough decision of declining a raise or not working because of the cost of care. We want to support their career advancement. The second call to action, I will tell you, it doesn't even cost anything. Appreciation. Our early educators are essential. They are essential employees providing essential services that our community depends on, and often they're an unsung hero. Their wages are on par with other businesses, like I mentioned, grocery stores or fast food. And the reality is they're providing such a critical service, and they're often overlooked. The emotional attachment, the emotional commitment that they have, in addition to the dollars, it matters. That appreciation, that respect. As professionals, as educators who are truly shaping lives is important. And oftentimes they're not seen that way. They are not babysitters. They are not daycare workers. They are early educators who truly are shaping our future. So giving them that acknowledgement, that respect, that appreciation can go a long way in supporting those instructors and encouraging their continued career path and educational attainment.
Very well said, Lindsay. I feel so empowered. Like we all need to go out. We all need to do something. We need to listen because this is so important. And I love being a part of this discussion, our panel. Thank you so much. I wish we had like sound effects so we can have like a hand clap. Thank you so much for your insight, your comments, your suggestions, answering questions, especially from our question and answer portion. We have so many good questions in there now. And I'm like, why didn't y'all ask these earlier? But again, we have put the in brown at uwsuncoast.org for those questions to get answered at a later time. I personally want to thank United Way Suncoast for allowing me this opportunity to foster this discussion and this panel. It has truly been a pleasure. I personally have learned a lot today, so I really appreciate it. I also want to remind folks that if you need any more details, especially about United Way, the efforts and the opportunities that they have going on, and especially the continued conversation about this critical issue, you can head to unitedwaysuncoast.org. I'm going to say that again. It's unitedwaysuncoast.org/early learning dashboard. unitedwaysuncoast.org/early learning dashboard. And to wrap up our morning, we have a few minutes left. I am going to bring in United Way Suncoast Chief Impact Officer, Bronwyn Baytall.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share this important message with our community. We're so glad that you joined us, and it's encouraging to see so many community members and organizations who deeply care about the future and success of all of our children. United Way Suncoast believes that every person deserves equitable access to opportunities to create the life that they imagine. We act on that belief by partnering with businesses, nonprofits, media, government, and most importantly, you, our community. And we focus on the importance of education and financial stability. As a community, we now find ourselves at a crossroads. In crisis. A lack of access to quality childcare and early learning opportunities for every child in our state should alarm every one of us. And the time for action is now. I would have said yesterday, but we're here now. We're asking the questions and we're elevating this critical conversation. For too long, we have ignored the challenges faced by Alice, our asset-limited families, and under-resourced communities. This inaction has led to systemic inequities and a reduction in our qualified workforce. Investing early in education is, simply put, good for business. We created this dashboard as a means to an end. What kind of end depends on all of us. We've included a webinar survey that invites you to provide your contact information for future engagements, and I encourage you to do so. Do so as soon as possible before you forget. In the coming months, you can expect to hear from us again, asking that you join us to work toward tangible, systemic solutions. Let's continue to show up for our children, to plan, to create, and to reimagine what is possible. Today is a first step, and tomorrow depends on you. We'll see you again soon. Thank you for being here. United we rise, united we win. Onward.